Over the last few months, a series of recent scientific findings on global warming and its impact have sent alarm bells ringing.
It is found that rising temperatures could melt away at least 1/3 of the ice in the Himalayas by the end of the century. And that is an optimistic scenario, assuming the most ambitious climate change targets are met.
How badly will their disappearance hurt billions of Asians who depend on them to survive?
This is a climate crisis that you haven't heard of.
I think this report has conclusively proved that the glaciers have receded in the last 30 to 40 years, and that if we do not reduce global warming, if we do not reduce emissions, it's going to be drastic for our part of the world. So extremely important report, fills an important gap in knowledge, and we have to take this report very seriously.
We are very confident now. We have brought together 210 experts on the region. We have spent 5 years on this assessment. We've gone through a huge amount of published literature, peer-reviewed literature.
It's a comprehensive report which yet again serves as a reminder of how serious the crisis is. Act now or lose 2/3 of the Himalayan glaciers. That's the warning coming in very clearly. What should the immediate priorities be according to you?
I think the immediate priority would be to really take this report seriously and kind of devise means where all the countries, so it's not as if the melting of glaciers is a problem of this region alone. Himalayas are a global asset and it's plays such an important role in climate regulation globally. So the first act would be to actually, for all the countries, the developed as well as the developing ones like India and China, to hold on to their pledge and remain within the 1.5 degree. That is, by doing that itself, I think that's the only way that the Himalayan glaciers can be saved.
Even if those targets were met, the glaciers would still melt by 1/3. Therefore, is it game over already?
That's correct. So it's a rather scary scenario. We'll lose 1/3 of our glaciers, basically. That's what it's telling us. But if we can hold the line to 1/3 of the glaciers, I believe we'll figure out how to adapt and deal with it. The frightening part is if we don't do anything with climate change and the emission trends continue, we'll lose 2/3 of the glaciers. And think about all the impacts on people, on the environment and agricultural systems as well. That will be the hit that will be extremely difficult to handle.
Major rivers systems are fed by these glaciers, from the Ganges to the Mekong. 250 million people live in these mountains and 1.6 billion people live downstream. It means these people are going to be impacted by glacial lake outbursts, floods, and droughts. This region is also home to some of the poorest people in the world who live under $2 a day. Their lives are going to be impacted the most.
Between 1/4 and 1/3 of the human population on this planet depend on the water resources from the mountains in this region. So it's a critically important resource, of course, for the region, but a global resource also. And when those glaciers disappear, it wreaks havoc on agriculture, on food security, water security, on lives and livelihoods across the region.
I don't think it's a question about being pessimistic. I think it's a question about being realistic. I think for too long we talked about climate change in a very abstract way, as if it didn't really have these kind of impacts. And I know many climate scientists and policymakers have said, well, we don't want to scare people, but I think the reality is we need to first tell the truth, and then we need to have real policies that give people hope. And I think the irony, of course, is within climate change, it is both. It is one of the greatest injustices and greatest inequalities, that the people who are the least responsible for this crisis are the ones that are being most impacted. But also within it is the possibility of having a vision of an economy and of a society and of regions which are better integrated, fairer, more equal, safer. And as what my colleague just said, it actually brings countries together to actually have to address this global problem. But you have to be able to identify what the issues are.
There are a lot of people there, and they're wonderful people, and they're resourceful and resilient, and they deserve the best chance they can get as well. So I think it's a global solution that has to be put into place here to help these people out.
Mr. Sharma, this is a political issue at the same time, and a scientific issue. But how can these countries set aside some of their differences to be able to team up, move forward, and tackle the problem?
I think I'm very optimistic. ICIMOD is convening all these meetings of these 8 countries, and the cooperation has been fantastic. I think we have to raise this from technical to really a political level of discussion. And the report is not going to be the end for ICIMOD. We have summary for policymakers. And now the HKH call to action is being developed from the report, and we are going to the countries first. And we plan by 2020, we would like to have a summit of the environmental ministers.
Like anyone who's concerned about the future, this is going to be a big story, and it's not just the local impacts in that region. This is happening globally, and it's going to have sort of global repercussions.
Well, I think the voice of people all around the world is increasingly being heard and demanding action on climate change, demanding we move away from our fossil fuels. We need to keep those in the ground. And as I said, the solutions are actually also solutions not only to the climate crisis, but inequality. By moving to renewable energy, we can not only solve the climate crisis, but we can also bring energy to the 1.5 billion people in the world who don't have access to energy.